Baby shark. Oh, don't worry, this is the 1 hour version. I've got plenty more of time left. I can do this another time. We are supposed to talk about the American Revolution. And specifically, a big part of that was the Revolutionary War. So you guys last week wrote your introductions. A few of you didn't finish that, so I'm sure you're scrambling back now to get to that assignment from Thursday. But for everybody else and those people, when they're done, we're going to be writing your first body paragraph. And second thing is, if you need a little review, you need to go back to that Thursday assignment and watch those optional videos that review the basics of the American Revolution. Thank you to Keem for the shortened version. And as we look at these, this first body paragraph is about the war. And just like when we watched that John Adams miniseries in class, we talked about how we weren't going to spend a lot of time on the fighting because I just wanted to focus on how the fighting was miserable. I didn't want to glorify it or make it fun. Like, here's this boring essay and topic we're learning about. Now let's get to the fun war part. That's so interesting. I wanted that part to just feel sad and something we glossed over. And so in your essay, we're not going to talk a lot about tactics and things. If you're interested in that, YouTube is a great resource. The internet's a great resource now, if ever a lot of you have time, so go for it. So the first thing I want to start is about why. Why did this happen? And this sample body paragraph I'm doing with you, feel free to copy parts of, but I would, of course, like you to make it your own, or completely make it your own if you don't need any of the support. Why did it happen? The obvious thing that we've talked about and that you've heard about is taxes. We know that the colonists who were sent from England didn't really want to be there. The only reason they wanted to be there was because England had been made a horrible place for them. Some of them were prisoners, and they were given the choice of leaving to America or staying in England and going to prison or being killed. And at that point, going to America to live in the American colonies was almost a death sentence. Most people who came died quickly. The other people were people who would not convert to King George's version of Christianity, or who politically did not like King George. So these were people who would just as soon have their nice home in England, but for various reasons were not welcome there. So a lot of these were already risk takers and very independent thinkers who came to America. They were not necessarily explorers. They were not necessarily good survivalists. They came here not necessarily by force, but by semi-force. When they got here, they looked pretty weak. The French saw them and thought, well, look at these weak people who don't know how to survive. Let's take them over, right? So the French were ready to kill a lot of them, take a lot of their land. England stepped in. They had a war with France, the French and Indian War, and England saved their colonists, these same people who England kind of forced to go over there because there were issues with the king, and these people, the king stepped in to save them, right? And it cost a lot of money to win that war. And so the king said, hey, colonists, we just saved you from France in this war. Help pay us this money back, right? He said, we need to get paid back for this war, and to pay the money back, he had a tax. The colonists heard about this. They said, all right, there's this country, France, who hates England. They tried to kill the colonists. England saved the colonists. The colonists said, okay, let's chip in some, oh, nope, let's not do that. They decided they would not pay the taxes. And then after the colonists decided this, they wrote a letter to King George explaining that they wouldn't pay on. And King George responded by imposing even more taxes, which made the colonists even madder. So a big cause of this was taxes. But the other big cause is distance. Right? We talked about that ocean takes 3 months to get across. And so imagine your long-lost love is living in England, and she writes to you, oh, Keem, my long-lost love in America, I love you and want to join you. And so 3 months later, Keem gets that letter. And then he writes back to her, I would really like you to join me, but lots of people here are dying. It would take another 3 months to get that, right? And then his great love in England writes back again and says, no, but I'm coming anyways, right? There's another 3 months. Now we're up to 9 months. And then Keim writes back, please don't, it's not safe. There is another 3 months. We're at now 1 year to write those letters. And that's kind of what all these relationships were like at this time. The colonists were not regularly in touch with England. It's a 3-month minimum time to get a letter back and forth. And even then, most people can't read. Most of these colonists have no communication with England. They can't write letters. They can't read letters. Everything they're getting is secondhand. So there's this place that's far away that most people never hear from, and all of a sudden they want money. That's kind of hard to swallow for people. Then at the same time, you have those Enlightenment ideas about representation, and people say, I don't think we want the king taking our money. And at first they say, well, because he's far away, and then they go, oh no, because we didn't get a vote for him. And that kind of comes in later. So you have that main thing of taxes, that secondary thing of just it being far away, and all of a sudden you have those Enlightenment ideas of I should get some say in who's in charge of me. I should at least get a say. I don't get to decide myself, but some say. And so you get that Enlightenment idea of representation. Those are the big 3 causes, right? So let's make a sentence. The main cause of the Revolutionary War was money. England wanted to be paid back for defending the colonists against France. The colonists let's capitalize colonists because they are the colonists. The colonists had been separated from England for so long that they had started to think of themselves as not English, some of them. Moreover, they liked the idea of being able to vote for who was in charge. And they did not vote for England's king. Okay. So that's kind of what caused it. Now, before we get to the effect, I want to talk about what was expected to happen. Most people expected the colonists to get crushed in this war. And that's a big reason why the colonists and their leaders adopted the idea that we need to fight this war because we should vote for our own leader. You didn't hear them saying we should fight this war because we're going to win it. Most people thought they wouldn't. They needed to say, here's this noble cause that you should be willing to sacrifice your life for. And people were able to say, you know what, I might die, but I'm going to fight for this anyways. That's kind of how they raised this army. To simply say, fight in this war for us, we're going to win, you're going to get lots of money. Most people thought that wasn't true, so they didn't go that route to sell it. That's why it became this big kind of noble campaign about representation and having a vote. Now, the big gamble was that France would help the colonists. And this just seems weird. France literally was just fighting a war against the colonists. France was attacking the colonists. England was defending the colonists from France. France, who was just attacking the colonists now said, France, will you help us beat England in a war? And the French hate England. That's why they were attacking the colonists in the first place. They thought of the colonists as English. But as soon as the colonists were willing to say, you know what, we don't like England, we're not English, France was then able to say, great, we'll help you beat England in this war. And so the colonists, before they got France's help, were expected to lose. after they got France's help, they were still expected to lose, but not quite as much. So who was expected to win this war? Most of the world expected England to win the war. The colonists did manage to get, if you want a fancy word for get, you can say enlist the help of France as they wanted a way to get revenge against England. England and France had been long-term enemies for a long time. Now, who won the war? Well, the colonists did win. Partly was the help from France, and partly it was the distance. All those English troops had to come over for 3 months to get to the Americas. And the last big reason, well, there's more, but the last one we're going to talk about here is that the English were still used to a very formal warfare where they thought you meet at a battlefield, you fight in this very structured, formal way, everybody lines up facing each other, then you shoot each other, and the colonists didn't do that. The colonists were willing to ambush people, they didn't wear uniforms, it was hard to tell who a soldier was, they would attack the English troops at night, they would do all kinds of unexpected things that weren't the way wars were normally fought. So who won the war? In the end, the colonists won the war with the help of France, tired British troops who had traveled months, and new fighting tactics. And that new main fighting tactic was ignoring the rules of war. It used to be that war was fought at a set time on a set battlefield, and the colonists didn't do that. And new fighting tactics, England was defeated. Now we have those guiding questions that you'll see from last week. Once you've answered each of those guiding questions, you can delete them and put things together into one clear paragraph describing the basics of the Revolutionary War. So that's your only job today, is to make a body paragraph.